Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Female Filmmakers Fuse with Alexa Polar, only on LA Talk Radio.
Thank you for listening. This is Female Filmmakers Fuse. I'm your host, Alexa Polar. I have my co-host today here, Robin Pabello.
Hello, hello. Happy Sunday.
And for the first time ever, we have a gentleman in the studio. It's my nephew, Brendan Polar.
How's it going, guys?
Real quick to call in, it's 818-602-4929, 818-602-4929. Robin, where can they find us?
So you can find FFF on any of your favorite streamings. You can go to iTunes and Google Play, etc., or you can listen to us live every Sunday from noon to 1 on LA Talk Radio, Channel 2, I believe.
Yes.
And all you got to do is just look for a black and white photo that I took of Alexa.
What? Okay.
as the cover of our podcast.
But this is only on LA Talk Radio, but I'm not the only one here. So usually it's Robin who's co-hosting, or sometimes Kathy, but for the most part it is Robin. Today our very special guest is Amy Starkey. Amy, did I say that correctly?
Yes.
I always ask that because I don't do well with last names, especially. I don't know why. And I always want to make sure that I pronounce things correctly. Amy, I'm really excited to have you on today as our guest. You're doing something that is so in the times right now. First of all, Amy is a writer-director, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you have a project called In Her View. Mm-hmm. And it's extremely important and powerful. You want to tell us a little bit about the project, and then we'll go back to you as an individual.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. Thank you. In Her View is, I like to call it a film within a film, because it's about a documentary filmmaker who is interviewing women to tell their abortion stories. And through the course of meeting these different women and hearing these different stories, one woman in particular, has a story that, kind of jars her in terms of her view about women's rights and abortion rights, and causes her to question her own story, as well as her own views. So she ends up quite conflicted. But, I really do try to cover as large a spectrum of women's stories, because this is a subject that has been ignored and controversial and not really spoken about for so long, So for me, it's really about giving voice to a type of story that really hasn't been told before, and in all its variety. And, it's become so politicized, especially right now. Right. And so often we talk about it in terms of morality, religion, politics, and the really personal stories of women have kind of slid by the wayside. We don't really talk about the whys and the wherefores and the situations that have led women into a position of having to make this choice or wanting to make this choice. So I really wanted to delve into that a little bit and see how women telling their stories can impact the way we view it from a more, heartfelt place, as opposed to intellectually or politically. if that makes sense. So these two women at the center of the film really kind of undergo a change in their personal views. So the filmmaker, goes from feeling like she's, a feminist, pro-choice woman wanting to give voice to women, and then it triggers a personal reaction in her that causes her to, question those views. Meanwhile, the woman who she interviews goes from being anti-abortion and not wanting to have an abortion to realizing just how important it is to give women the option to make their own choices and decisions in life. So it really is, what I like to use the term is a pro-voice film. It's really not, trying to tell people what to think, but asking the question of, what's right for women and how can we give women room to be honest and just tell their stories as honestly and transparently as possible without feeling judged or stigmatized for their stories.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Amy, let's circle back to getting to know you. And then because this is such a heavy topic, I want to focus a lot in your project. But let's just sway real quickly onto you as the individual, as a filmmaker. How did you get into this industry? How did you, become the writer, director that you are?
Well, I chose to. I don't have a background in film. I'm a newly minted female filmmaker, as I call myself, because this is my first project. And I studied to be an actress years ago, and I was, a struggling, aspiring actress for many years. I've always been a writer. I wrote stories as a kid, and I wrote small scripts, and I wrote and directed a play years ago in the Toronto Film Festival. But, as so often is the case, life kind of took a different turn, and I didn't make it as an actor necessarily. I've always acted, but just, community theater and volunteer and so forth. So I never kind of broke into the professional arena. And then I became a single mom, and that kind of took the biggest focus of my life for the last 13 years. But, I had an experience with abortion myself, and it had a big impact on me. And I just needed to tell that story, So when my daughter was really young, I sat down and started writing, and I wrote the screenplay. And, as I said, I was busy, being a working single mom, so it didn't really feel realistic for me to pursue producing it for several years. So I just kind of sat on it, and it was difficult to because there is a stigma about abortion and women who have them, and so it was really hard for me to really pursue it. But I needed to get it out, and so I wrote a first draft, and then it sat, for a long time on my computer, and I didn't do anything with it. And then it was largely because of the political situation in the U.S. That I started feeling more and more like I really needed to pursue producing it, because I kept hearing all of these stories about state laws, so-called trap laws at the state level, where, women had the right to abortion on paper only, but accessibility was being restricted so much. And then, here in Canada too, I don't know if everybody knows, but I am Canadian. I live in Vancouver. While we're certainly not in as dire situations by a long shot as Americans, the debate started heating up here too, and I would see, people starting to talk again, debate, the right and wrong of abortion. And in all honesty, it just really scared me. I thought, my God, after all of these years, are our rights really being threatened?
Yes.
How is this possible? So that, lit a fire
Right.
and in me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just started getting really more serious about producing, and started talking to my network about how we could get it done. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for those that are listening, just to go back to the roots of where, born and raised, influences, kind of like what really, like, what do you think was like the key inspiration for you, whether you were a child or a young adult or a teenager, that inspired you to start writing? So where did you grow up, and where were you born, and all that jazz?
So I grew up outside in the suburbs of Toronto, in Toronto, Canada. And it was teachers. it was a teacher, in fact, a teacher that I reconnected with later in life after I had studied acting in New York and moved back to Canada, and reconnected with this teacher who it was my third grade teacher, and she was the one that encouraged me to write, and noticed that there was a lot of dialogue in my writing, actually. So she encouraged me to write stories, and then, like I said later, she encouraged me again to write my scripts, because she said, I can remember so clearly, she said, I always noticed, you used a lot of dialogue in your stories. And she was just a wonderfully inspirational teacher. I had her for 2 years in elementary school, third grade, and then again in fifth grade. And she, she took me under her wing. It was a difficult few years for me. My parents divorced when I was in grade 3, and coincidentally, this teacher, Dorothy Dowie, her name is Dorothy Willis now. She retook her maiden name after her divorce. But she was Mrs. Dowie to me, and she was going through her own divorce. She was watching me deal with my parents' divorce, and we just really connected, and she was there for me. And then again in grade 5, I was bullied quite a bit by my peers, and she was a source of comfort and safety for me when I really needed one. And she cast me in the class play, so she encouraged my acting as well. And it was just, every year from then on, I considered myself a writer and an actor. I went to university in Toronto, York University. I took English and communications, thinking at that point to pursue writing in a journalistic sense. Mm-hmm. But I very quickly realized that, drama and storytelling was a bit more my forte, mm-hmm. and where I was led. And that's, once I saw the audition notice for the school in New York, I was really fired up to go study acting in New York. And I've just always been, a writer, diaries, letters. I moved around quite a bit as a younger person, so I was always writing letters. Back before there was social media, we wrote letters and mailed them across the country to each other. So that's how I stayed connected to my friends, was letter writing. And then, of course, once I got into acting, I was writing plays and so forth. So it's always been a part of me. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. I actually still handwrite letters to my family, and I just started recently typing my letters out to other friends, just to get them aware of vinyls and
great.
Books and typewriters.
I still
flowing.
I prefer receiving letters, not bills, letters.
I mean, I think because I just had this conversation about writing and taking the time to slow down, and mm-hmm. if you have to type something out or hand write a letter, it takes more thought, because if you make a mistake, you know, like,
there's no autocorrect on that. There's no
right. And like
spell check.
There's whiteout. I guess.
There's whiteout.
There is
Yeah.
whiteout. Well, so here's the thing. So when I type my letters, I actually leave the mistakes in because, like, you know, it shows that you're human. It shows that there's fault, you know, and those little pieces show a vulnerability of yourself. So like if it's perfect, you know, that's not a bad thing because etiquette wise, it's kind of nice, but at the same time to kind of be vulnerable just a little bit to show that is a beautiful way of communicating. So I admire
that is really
that.
poignant. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, Robin's always deep here on Sundays. So you did, you know, touch base on. First of all, let me just say that teachers are extremely important. My English teacher in high school is part of the reason why I was really got into writing. So I totally understand where you're coming from. And I remember when I graduated, she wasn't my teacher when I was a senior in high school. She was a teacher when I was a freshman. And when I graduated, I went back to her class and I gifted her a book, and it was a first edition, you know, book. And I don't recall, I just got it by accident, and she was the first person I thought of. And I was like, I'm going to gift this to her as a thank you. And I gifted it to her, and she got overwhelmed. And I told her, I was like, well, you're the reason why I want to get into writing. And she had no idea, you know, and she was really thankful for that. And I think she was planning on retiring. And as one of those very soft-spoken teachers, there's, you know how in high school especially you have like, it's the same thing as there's a popular teacher that all the students talk about and they want to get in their class. And so she wasn't that teacher. And so not a lot of people talked about her. It was just like, you go to her class and that was it, and moving on. But she made an impact in my life, and she was glad that she had done that. She didn't realize it. And I think a lot of teachers don't realize that they somehow impact at least one person. Robin used to be a teacher, and I know she impacted a lot.
This is making me well up a lot of old feelings because like I taught, so prior career to being a DP, I taught pre-K, kindergarten, 6th grade, and 2nd grade. And so for me, like hearing you guys say that is such a rewarding thing. Like I'm literally misty-eyed right now because, you know, like just to hear you guys pay homage to your teachers because it's hard. I don't want to cry. Guys,
they're underpaid, underappreciated.
Have so much impact.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, it's so beautiful to hear that because, like, it's true. You know, like you put in all this time and effort, and you know, it's always funny because you don't know that until later in life. And like I've been fortunate enough to have some of my students reach out to me and be like, hey, Miss P, so, you know, this is what's going on in life, or hey, what's going on? I've seen your like Instagram. I like to see that you're happy doing this. And I'm like, yeah, you know, and like even just I made like, they weren't my students at the time, but like I had like these 6th grade girls, like 3 or 4 of them, and I was like, promise me you're going to be good in high school, save yourself, save it for college, party in college, you know, and it was kind of nice because like now one of them is actually, she just got proposed to and she's getting married and she's super happy, and it's just a really nice thing to hear from both of you guys, you know, from two different people from across, you know, not that you're across the ocean, but you're above us, you know.
Yeah.
But like,
I'm in the same time zone.
Yeah, that's good.
But if your teachers,
but a different country.
There you go.
True.
Exactly.
But I mean, like, if your teachers could hear this, like, it would. I mean, like you said, you gave her a first edition book when you graduated. Like, I'm sure this teacher still has this book, and it means the world to her because it's kind of like, wow, like I got that reward. And that's honestly like the good teachers, you know, like they just want to make sure that they've been an influence and have impacted you in some way, shape, or form to your core. And for you guys to say this, like whether it was like a year later, 2 or 20 years later, it's kind of like you made that influence. Like, my God, like something that I did gave you like a positive or an inspiration, and it's beautiful. So thank you guys for sharing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, we did touch on the second thing. Now, you're in Canada and we're here in the U.S. and you're seeing all the hot mess the U.S. is going through.
Yeah.
I want to go to Canada because of it. It's, and it's crazy because we're regressing a lot, and it's scary. And you said it. People use not just politics; they use religion. They use so many different factors, and it's weird to mesh it all in. Just to try to get a point of view when it should be separated. I've always said, because I've had people ask me like, oh, what religion like do you practice, or what do you identify as in religious wise? And my answer is always the same. I was raised Catholic. I still I don't go to church every Sunday. I'm here.
No, but you have Catholic guilt.
But I sometimes joke around and I say I'm a convenient Catholic because I pray when it's convenient to me, but that's not exactly true. That's just a joke. But I do identify as Catholic. But the way I see it now as an adult, and I feel strongly about this, is that to me, and this is how I explain it, is that religion is a private thing. My belief and my relationship with God is between me and God, and that's it. And it will influence whatever thoughts, whatever plans I make, whether it's something that I regret of a mistake I've made, or I praise and thank God for things that are going well in life, or even things that aren't going well in life because I know they're for a reason. But that's me personally. So that's my personal thing with God. I'm not going to push that on anyone, and I wouldn't want it pushed on me. So when people come up with politics and use it, and it's become such a thing here in the U.S. where, and I dislike saying it, but it's so obvious where they're saying like, he's Christian, so we have to vote for this person. He's not Christian, so we shouldn't vote for that person. We forget here in the U.S. the reason why we started this country, and that was to get away from the religion that was forced upon them when they were in England, when they were in, across the pond. And so they left not to discover something. They left because they wanted freedom, and that was part of the freedom. They wanted freedom of religion, and it blows my mind that it's gotten to such a way now where that's the right religion when there is no right religion. There's no wrong or right. And it influences everything. It influences the way we treat each other. It influences the hypocrisy, especially. There's so many factors of it, and it saddens me because it's a personal thing. And you're pushing your personal thoughts on other people when it shouldn't be that way. If you're really going to reference a book, and I'm speaking of the Bible, if you're going to reference something that's a collection of stories, okay? If you're going to reference something, then you should really reference it. And it's was written to give love towards each other and lessons on whatnot. It's not to like there's the right way and that's it.
Well, it depends on what part of the Bible and which Bible you're talking about.
Yeah,
this is true.
I mean, they cherry pick quite a bit.
They do,
to, justify their stance on things.
Exactly.
They choose to ignore the things that don't serve their agenda. I'm very cynical when it comes to the role of religion in the particularly right now in right-wing politics, because I'm not even convinced that they themselves are convinced that they are doing what they're doing in God's name. No. I think that they are just simply, as you said, using religion to manipulate people into voting the way they want to vote. The hypocrisy is just so obvious to me, that I smack my head listening to, well, I don't listen anymore because it just makes me a little
Is
too
that
angry.
not insane? Okay,
Yeah.
so that is something that I have literally switched that off. I used to read the newspaper. I used to be like in the now with all current events. And I'm just like, I just don't want to listen to it because to me now, it's just like white noise. And
It's toxic to your ears.
it and to the soul, my gosh. Like for me, I just like talking about religion. Like I'm also Catholic raised. Grandma was like hardcore Catholic, love her to death, totally butted heads. I like as a child was like, isn't God really just like a higher being and like his mask is for like every religion around the world? And she was just like, no, there's only one God. And I was like, okay. And I was just like, well, okay, fine. I have to be respectful because you're my elder. But at the same time, growing up, I was just like, I was like,
one God, but many different ways of interpreting.
Yes.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly.
There's one God, and we all interpret that being in our own way.
Yeah.
There's not one way of interpreting God or understanding God or having relationship with God. I think there are, we know there are many different ways. That doesn't necessarily mean that, anyway.
one is right and one is wrong.
That doesn't necessarily mean that it's only your way of perceiving God.
Correct.
I love to say the thing I love is from Shakespeare. I studied classic theater in both English and theater school, and I always come back to that wonderful Shakespeare line from Romeo and Juliet. That's a completely different context, but
Right.
A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Well, a god by any other name would still be God. Just because some people call God Allah and some people call him Vishnu, or some people call her a goddess, or Hera, or, however you interpret God, it's still God. It's just a name. And if we agree that God is beyond the body, then to give God a gender is really just a matter of convenience. I do tend to call God he as opposed to she, even though I'm probably I'm a very strong feminist. There's a lot of strong feminists out there, and I'm all about women's rights, but and I did go through a phase. Definitely, I went through my Wicca pagan phase back in my late 20s, where I was really exploring different facets of God. So I studied Taoism, practicing Tai Chi and reading the Tao, the book of Tao. I dabbled a little bit in Buddhism, but mostly it was Taoism and Wicca, very nature-based spiritualities.
Right.
And I even attended a Wicca mass with a woman who grew up Catholic, and she was really surprised to see how the similarities between Wicca Halloween celebration and a Catholic mass. She said so many like ritualistic similarities there, right down to the Mother, Maiden, and Crone, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. There's so many similarities, and although I've never really delved into a real comprehensive world religion study, I did a little bit of that with Wicca Taoism, and then I read the Bible cover to cover a few times as well. And when you have something to balance the Bible off, like a pagan philosophy, or a nature-based philosophy, it is really interesting how that can alter your perception of the words that you're reading and open your mind to a different way of perceiving them and interpreting them. So I found, I mean, I was raised without religion. My parents would call themselves, or my dad was pretty atheist or agnostic. But my mom would, and my stepfather would call themselves Christian, and quite faithful Christians. But we never went to church. We were, not particularly good Christians in the sense of the word. So I really was able to come at religion or spirituality with an open mind and an innocence as a child. The Bible actually says, come to God as a child. And that's what that says to me, is you come to God with open heart, open mind, innocence, and come to your own understanding of what God means. And that spoke very deeply to me. And so I did end up going through kind of a born-again conversion to Christianity. But I look very different from most vocal Christians, particularly, in the U.S. But again, those are just the most vocal Christians. And this is what I often say when to people when religion comes up. Christians have gotten a bad name because of the far right Christian agenda in the U.S. But that's not the majority of Christians. Right. I really believe that to be true. I think the majority of Christians really do have an open heart and an open mind, and love their neighbor, and do unto others as they would have others do unto you. But we don't hear from them. We don't hear from them because Jesus taught grace and humility. And that, that a relationship with God is a personal thing. Mm-hmm. So you don't hear them spouting off. Right. And that's why I do, end up feeling very angry that the most vocal, oppressive aspect of Christianity gets all the attention. And that's what is, what Christians are known for today. Right. And that's very sad to me. And that's, pushing people away from the teachings of Christ as opposed to bringing them to the teachings of Christ. Right.
And that's very true. I mean, that goes with anything. Less is more. You have people that talk about money, and they're the ones that are most struggling. And I think they talk about it because they want to seem, they put on this facade that everything's fine and I have this and that. And so the less, you share, the more it is, and the more respect, genuine respect and love you give because you get because that's what you're giving. If you're going to, anything, if you say too much, then you're saying too much to overcompensate. And then there's some lie there beneath there, or hypocrisy or whatnot, and that goes back into pretty much like it all intertwines back to your project, and that's why I wanted to bring it up, because it's really interesting hearing it from someone that's not here in the U.S. and it's partly the reason why it sort of influenced you, not influenced you, but helped pushed you to do it, because you've been wanting to do this for a while.
Americans tend to forget that your culture does have a huge impact on us in Canada. We kind of tend to say that everything that happens in the U.S. eventually happens here too. We're about 5 years out. We inherit a lot of your culture here in Canada, even in the political sphere. So we're already starting to see. One. Well, this is what I'm saying. Already in Ontario, they've just elected Doug Ford as premier of the province, and he's like Donald Trump 2.0. That's terrifying.
It is because, and it's not just in the U.S. though. It's it's around the world right now.
Sure,
like
exactly.
There's a lot of
Venezuela is going through it. It's just
the Philippines. I mean, some of it's just kind of insane.
Did you see Duarte in the Philippines? What he said, that women will continue to be raped as long as they're beautiful.
Yes, I can't.
Oh, excellent.
I cannot. I mean, I'm really just kind of flabbergasted by it, and yes, the question is, are we really going through this again?
Regressing.
and total regression.
Well, the other thing I've been saying lately is, progress always happens in stages, and typically we take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and then 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So that's the optimist in me that says, okay, from a feminist standpoint, we came through 1, 2, or 3 waves of feminism, and we did make so much progress in the latter half of the 20th century. Now we're seeing the backlash, right? Now we're seeing the pushback, because we have succeeded in disrupting the culture, disrupting the norm that was, mid-century, mid-20th century in the U.S., and of course, even more so in, less progressive cultures around the world. So now we're in the 1 step back phase. That's the way I perceive, the election of Donald Trump. We took 2 steps forward, and now we're taking a step back. But you know what that means? We're due for another 2 steps forward.
Exactly. Because I was going to say, like, in all honesty, yes, with that regression, at the same time, there's a lot of progression in the smaller sense, and those small steps are going to add into giant leaps. There's a lot.
I hope so, yeah.
Yeah, because the thing of it is it was quite interesting is, and it's kind of frustrating to say this out loud, is that, we as women are standing together, lifting each other up, but at the same time, we're not as strong until a man also stands up for us as well, to voice that, to say stop. And there are a lot of men that have been supportive, and I don't like saying that out loud, because it does bother me that why do we need that? But at the same time, it does have to be a balance.
Well, allies are important, like I said,
equality.
To Brendan.
Yeah. Well, exactly. That's why I said it has to be a balance.
Absolutely.
That's where it all comes down, and that's where it stems from. And I think that if we have that as a balance, I don't want it to shift where we're doing exactly the same thing that has been happening to us. It just needs to find a really good balance, because then it becomes a source of harmony.
Yes. And that is what, again, today people seem to forget, is feminism is not about oppressing men.
Right.
It's about 50-50 balance.
Exactly. Yep.
It's equality. That's all we're asking for, is equality. And in so many arenas, we don't have that, most notably in, our industry, the film industry. The stats are just a crying shame. Yeah. And in government too, that's why this moment really is galvanizing women to stop asking for permission and just take their place at the table, whether it's in the boardroom or in government. The numbers of women running for government in the U.S. Right now is inspiring. And, women in the film industry are demanding their place behind the camera, and getting our stories told too. And the industry is responding slowly. The numbers out of TIFF right now, the Toronto International Film Festival, I think something like 40% of the movies screening at TIFF this year are made by women. So that's encouraging.
That's larger than Venice.
Well, listen, I do have to
by a long shot.
And what's nice about it is that it's going to continue. And what's beautiful, even so, is that the young women, the little girls, all across the nation, all around the world, are seeing all of these strong females come up, and then also the strong men that are also standing side by side, supporting their creative.
Yeah,
absolutely. I look back at my life and I think, God, I've only, come into directing within the last 5. Well, I guess I did direct when I was younger. Like I said, I directed a play that I wrote in Toronto many years ago. And then I stopped for a long time. And like I said, my life took a different path. And then I came back to directing about 5 years ago. And in that time, I really feel like I've found my element, to quote, I think Ken Robinson talks about finding your element. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like, wow, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, particularly with this project. It just feels so important, and I feel like I've finally found my groove and found my purpose and passion in life. But, I'm in my 40s, and I think, well, what took me so long to find that? And I mean, I think it's really because, women in my generation, a little less so. I mean, by the 80s, when I was coming up, there was, we were starting to come into our own. But really, if you were going to go into entertainment, it was an actress. That was, and only the very prettiest of us. If you were a really pretty girl, you could maybe have a career in film and TV. If you weren't so pretty, but you were really super talented, you might have a stage career, or, the supporting, homely best friend. But, there were very few, we were just really narrowly defined. Certainly we didn't, again, the hashtag, if she can see it, she can be it. Representation is so important.
Yes.
And seeing women out there, producing and writing and directing is so important, as you say, for the young girls who are watching, because now it's a possibility. Oh, I could do that too. I don't think it ever even crossed my mind when I was growing up. I was a writer, short stories, and certainly everybody knew I could perform and act, but it never even crossed my mind to try and direct. It was all about asking somebody else for permission to do my art.
Yeah, we didn't have those role models growing up,
or they weren't publicized as much.
Well, that's the thing. It becomes a popularity, and who you know and what you know, and who's repping what. And, that's the reason why this is a beautiful platform, is because we can all touch bases with each other, and we can all lift each other up. We can, hey, you need help on this, or, oh, this would be a great idea, let's do this, or, that's the beauty of it, is that we can connect.
Absolutely.
We're in
California. I did want to say thank you so much for providing this platform for women's voices, because they're so necessary right now.
Yeah.
No, thank you for being here. Thank you for being one of the, the ladies that has a strong voice, that is willing to,
is not afraid.
Yes.
Is not afraid, because, okay, in her view, that's,
yes,
that's something that even now some would fear even trying to do. And here you are doing it, and you're talking about a topic that, it's a hot topic. And, you're going to get people that support it and people that, may not want to even watch it because they don't want to have that open mind. And I think that's what's important, is to have an open mind. It's very important. It's a topic that's very important. Abortion is an important topic. I think that there's no need to question. There's no reason to question it. We women, each individual has their reasons, and we have to respect that. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is, and we have to respect that. That's what it comes down to, I think.
I mean, I believe
I agree.
Yeah, me too. I really feel like you can't put a generalized thought or law that's applicable to females in general. I mean, everything is a case-by-case issue. I am definitely a pro-choice. It's your body. You can do what you want with it, whether I agree or not. For whatever your reasons are, it's still your choice. At the end of the day, I don't feel like anyone can say, hey, you are allowed to do this, but you're not allowed to do that. Whether you're female or male, adult, child, teenager, you are who you are. And that's by choice. That's by whether you were born or influenced, or times have changed and you've have just grown, or have been made aware of certain aspects that you were not aware of. Like you don't know each person's journey. You don't know what they're battling or what they're going through, because it's not your life, it's theirs.
Absolutely.
Well, that's it. I mean, there are as many abortion stories as there are women. I mean, and that is really what I was striving to demonstrate with my project, is that every woman has a different life experience and different reasons for making the choice she makes, whether that's to have a child, keep a child, put it up for adoption, or terminate the pregnancy. Every woman has a different story and different reasons, and that's why the storytelling aspect of In Her View was so important to me, and the impact that those stories can have on the way people view it,
Right.
Because we can't decide for someone else. We don't know what they're going through. We don't know the impact that it will have. One of the strongest messages that I'm trying to get across is through the story of Grace, that so influences the protagonist, Pam. She suffers from her experience. I use that dreaded word, regret, and as pro-choice feminists, we really don't like, particularly in political environment in the U.S. where the stakes are so high for women. I mean, it's life and death for women in states and counties that don't have access to abortion. So it's really frightening to use that word regret when it comes to having an abortion. But it was really important for me to say, you know what? It still has to be her choice. It still has to be her choice. And in the story, Grace is traumatized. She's sort of talked into the abortion by her, or manipulated, as the case may be, by her boyfriend, who really doesn't feel like they can do this. They can't afford it. And so she does it because she doesn't feel like she can do it on her own without the support of her boyfriend and her family. And she's traumatized by it. But of course, she comes to realize that the reason she's so traumatized by her abortion is because it wasn't her choice.
Right. She was influenced. Or
she would have had, in different circumstances, she would have wanted to have her pregnancy continue.
Yeah.
So she made a choice that was not what she wanted, and that's where her trauma comes from, and that's the light bulb that goes off for her. Meanwhile, her story impacts Pam to such a degree that, she ends up and again, Pam, the filmmaker, has her own stuff going on because she was adopted as a child. So this documentary that she's making and listening to all these women's abortion stories is a catalyst for her to, seek out her birth family.
Right.
And that brings up all kinds of, deep held feelings that she had never really recognized before. So she ends up doing a flip-flop. But again, it's all about finding those gray areas and recognizing that there is no black and white answer when it comes to abortion and women. Every woman has a different story, and every woman has her own reasons for wanting to do what she wants to do with a pregnancy when she finds herself with an unplanned pregnancy in particular.
Right.
So that is really,
that's the social
the
justice.
core of the story.
The awareness and social justice of that. Wow.
And it's like I said, perfect timing. I mean, we're going through something scary right now. We don't know if Brett Kavanaugh is going to be confirmed or not, and that will impact a lot of things. And there's there's no going back, and that's a scary thing, and it's all because they really want to change the laws, and especially when it comes to Roe versus Wade. And you're project is extremely important.
Yeah.
You know, it's extremely important. Where can people find it?
So at this point, the project is a short film. It's a feature script that I wrote, but I haven't produced the feature script. I've only produced a short proof of concept so far. So I really appreciate, the chance to talk about it, because I am actively seeking, a producer and funding investors. We did a crowdfunding campaign to help fund the short, and that helped, but we haven't yet raised the funds to shoot the feature. So I mean, I'm definitely going to do it, low budget. I'm going to, in all likelihood, do it no matter what, even if I have to fund it myself, which I've so far done with the short. But I'm hoping to. I've submitted the short to a bunch of film festivals. So far, no one's bitten, unfortunately, but fingers crossed. Hopefully, we'll get it to some film festivals and get some exposure. And ultimately, I'm going to be identifying, some producers and funders who can hope to pitch to, so that we can come up with the money to get the feature made. So that's kind of where the project is right now. I've submitted to about 25 film festivals, and so I'm waiting to hear back from some of those. So I'm just kind of trying to get the word out. As you say, it is a really important film, and I think, or topic anyway, there aren't a lot of projects out there that are talking about abortion. There are a few, definitely. I would have expected more by now, because the political climate has been going this way for as long as it has. So I've been a little bit disappointed that I haven't seen more projects tackling this issue. I'm hearing I'm seeing and feeling a lot of fear on people still because of the stigma. So there have been a lot of initiatives to try and end the stigma. Exhale Pro Voice is a wonderful organization out of San Francisco who really inspired me and the term Pro Voice to allow women space to safely and honestly tell their stories. I've seen a few video campaigns, but there haven't really been a lot of feature films that I'm aware of. There may be some out there. I haven't heard about them.
Well, let's push for
and
that.
That's a little disappointing.
Yeah, no, let's push for yours to be one of the first ones out there. We do have to wrap it up. They can find more information of In Her View at inherview.com, correct?
inherviewfilm.com.
Film.com, thank you. And where can people find
and
you?
On social media as well. Pardon?
Where can people find you?
I'm at amy.starkey on Instagram. I have my website is connected to the film website, so it's amystarkey.com or inherviewfilm.com will get you to the same platform, same website. There's a lot of information on there, so I hope people will go check it out. We've got a lot of great, fun photo galleries. We're going to be featured in a photo campaign soon that's getting a lot of buzz and attention right now, called Bite the Bullet Stories. Also on Instagram, it's at Bite the Bullet Stories. And they are, Farah Aviva is doing photos of, celebrities, artists, everyday folk who have an issue that they are willing to bite the bullet for, and telling their stories about different issues. And of course, ours is focused on abortion. So I'm hoping that's going to come out very soon. Farah is in the middle of an Indiegogo campaign right now for that. So I would encourage people to check that out, because it's a wonderful, again, platform for raising awareness around underrepresented issues.
Perfect.
And
That's
on social
wonderful.
media, I'm on Instagram, and I have a Twitter account as well. You can find me at Amy E. Starkey on Twitter. In Her View Film has a Twitter account, an Instagram account, and we're on Facebook as well. So In Her View Film or amystarkey.com.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Thank you. So real quick.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Don't forget, you guys, everybody that's listening, to like, subscribe, and follow, share, listen to us live on every Sunday, or check us out on your local podcast.
All right. So thank you, Robin, here for being my co-host. Brendan, thank you for being our guest
Thank you
host.
for having me today.
And Amy, thank you again. Everyone, I encourage check out inherviewfilm.com. Okay. Have a nice
Thank
Sunday,
you.
everyone.
Happy half a week.
Thanks, you too. Yes, happy Rosh Hashanah.
That too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
You're listening to Female Filmmakers Fuse with Alexa Polar, only on LA Talk Radio.